Before we start talking about implantology, biology, or surgery, let me please first show you something. Everyone knows this? I think everyone knows it's a Lego brick, right? But this is a very special Lego brick, because exactly with this Lego brick, I used to build the biggest castles when I was a young boy. And with this Lego brick here on my right side, it's a very new one. My 7-year-old son is building his Ninjago dojos, Minecraft buildings, and Star Wars spaceships and so on. And now, please look at this. So, you see this? It's perfect fit. It's perfect reproducibility and it's perfect precision. And this is honestly exactly the world we want to create in our digital implantology. It's the first time in history we can plan a whole surgery in a digital environment. And this is so great, and I really love it. But now comes the uncomfortable truth. Because even the smartest, the most precise, and the most modern digital workflow cannot guarantee implantological success. But why is that? Because implants do not integrate into software. No, they integrate into living tissue like bone, blood, cells. Precision and technology can place the implant, but biology decides the outcome. And since centuries, science believed that the world and the mankind is made of the 4 elements: fire, water, air, and earth. And in implantology, we have our own elemental forces, like bone, titanium, blood, and steel. But today we live in a world where innovation no longer walks, but runs. And for decades in implantology, we have relied on our 4 classical elements. But what if they are no longer enough? So therefore, in my world, there's the 5th element. I call it biodigital implantology. It's a fusion of technology and nature. It's a mindset to engineer healing. Yes, to engineer healing. And it's a philosophy aimed at being best prepared for whatever may come, to minimize the risk of failure and to move as close as possible for success. So, welcome to the 5th element, and welcome to the world of biodigital implantology. But let me take you behind the scenes of my daily work. Every patient who is undergoing implant consultation is first digitally captured. So photos, intraoral scans, CBCT, and a face scan. But honestly, all of this data is completely useless if we don't put them into a matching or into a planning software. Only here we can do our digital backward planning to define the perfect position for our implants after having done a digital work. And when we have done all of this, we're quite good prepared, right? But hand on heart, are we really best prepared? Because look at this professional ski racer. Do you think that he is doing the course for the very first time when he's standing at the starting gate? Never. In his mind, he skied it dozens, maybe hundreds of times. He knows exactly when the snow turns ice, when he has to jump and when he has to go to. And this is exactly what I want to do in my biodigital implantology. I want to know the bone, the nerves, the soft tissue, long before I go to surgery. Nothing is left for chance. And I'm doing this by digitizing my patient as realistically as possible, by creating a digital avatar where I can visualize and extract every decisive segment. And this kind of special preparation is called deep learning. It's a preparation already used in other fields of surgery to ensure success, as Hu and colleagues in 2025 mentioned. Right, but after all this digital stuff, and I really love it, at the end we face the problem, there will be a real patient Yeah, the great unknown in my eyes, because I have no idea about the patient's immune system, no idea about his ability to regenerate and heal, no idea about his vitamin and mineral balance, what is so important for effective healing. And at the end, this patient holds the power to undo everything what we have precisely planned and what we have precisely prepared. So therefore, any patient who is doing implant treatment by others, he receives a pre and a post-operative recommendation of vitamins and minerals such as vitamin D and K, magnesia, calcium, omega-3 fatty acids, and so on, so that the body has enough substrate to accomplish what he has now to deal with, to heal quickly and effectively. Right, but this is my preparation of my macrocosmos. But what about our microcosmos? What about our daily battlefield, the one side? And the next slide shows all the magic. Sure, you would say sticks bone, right? But for me, it is enormous biological potential and enormous biological power. This is the point where biodigital becomes bioactive. And the magic of the sticky bone lies in its high concentration of its growth factors. And we know that these guys are so important for effective healing because they play a central role in cell regulation, cell migration, cell depletion, and so on. And they play a key role by coordinating the various stages of the healing process. And we know traditionally is a cascade of hope, right? One phase after the other. And it takes time. And what if we could guide this process? What if we could accelerate this process and make each phase more efficient? And you know what? Working with PRF makes it possible. With the patient's own powerful cells, we can guide all these cascades to the point zero, and your tissue formation can start after 5 days, not just after 2 weeks, and this is great. Yeah? And Gennady and colleagues published a very interesting and a very insightful study showing the overwhelming impact of PRF and growth factors considering wound healing and bone regeneration, how they promote and support all these important processes to engineer healing by ending up in angiogenesis and in osteoblasts. So on the whole, you can say working with PRF means we have a prolonged release of growth factors, reduced pain and reduced swelling, and faster soft and hard tissue regeneration, as proven by Gennady and by hundreds of other high-quality studies. But now let's stop talking about healing. Let's start showing it by going into my case. We have Kirsten, female, 51 years old. She has destroyed 22, 26, 27, non-smoker, non-relevant medical history. But she got nutritional supplementation, yeah? Vitamin D and K, magnesia, calcium, omega-3s, and so on. And this is a clinical situation at a first glance. Doesn't look too bad, right? But when we take a closer look, especially in the posterior region, we see that some crown margins are not in a very good condition, right? So, but let's go into deep learning. Here we see our patient's avatar with all the important structures segmented and colorized. And here you see the biggest advantage of a digital avatar in comparison to a conventional CBCT. We can actually simulate our tooth extraction. We can see and visualize the whole gingival contours without the teeth. We can see the whole 3D bony architecture without the teeth. And we see that we have in posterior region some chronicle cysts, and we see that we have in anterior region a very thin buccal lamella, even with a small fenestration. Yeah, but there's no problem. We do some augmentation later on. And you see, without this avatar, I could only see these precise structures, soft and hard tissue situation, only by raising a flap, only by exposing the bone completely, what I absolutely want to avoid in my surgery later on. And after deep learning, now comes precise planning by going into our AutoGate software. And we see that we have in the anterior region a really challenging and demanding situation. Yeah? But we already knew it through deep learning, so I'm ready for augmentation. And in posterior region, we have quite good bone condition. No internal, external sinus lifting is needed. Right, now everything is precisely planned. and everything is precisely prepared, we now move into surgery. Yeah? In my eyes, is the most demanding step when we're talking about immediate implantation. The very atraumatic surgery of the teeth. Yeah? And I perform this without using a scalpel, taking the smallest round burr available on the market, and I perform a targeted osteotomy of the dental hard tissue rather than the bone, and most importantly, without detaching the periosteum at any point of time. And after this comes the much more easier part, the full guided workflow. Yeah? Using my in-house designed and in-house printed drilling guides, and I can place the implants as planned from a prosthetic perspective. What is so important for long-time success in implantology, as Kyun Ji-soo in 2014 already mentioned. Yeah? And after this, we move to the next step. After having prepared our implant side, oh no, I switched it. After having prepared the implant side, we now move to the augmentation of our buccal lamella, yeah? To support the buccal lamella and to create some biological space. Yeah? What is so important, and to achieve a stabilization of our collagen membrane, I use a technique quite similar to connective tissue grafting. I first prepare an epiperostal pouch, and I use a suture technique where the needle enters apically, passes through the membrane, and returns apically again. And so I can secure a stable and correct position of our collagen membrane. And after this, the next step is the transmission of our pre-planned 3D position, but before I come to the insertion of my implants, we now reach a very key moment of my biodigital workflow, the biologization and the bioactivation of our implant surfaces with plasma and PRF. Yeah? And this so-called coating has been proven, especially in the early healing phase, to accelerate healing and to accelerate primary stability. And today we know we get no stabilization of our sockets without filling them. And therefore, I use my highly bioactivated sticky bone, I call it sticky filling, and I pack it deep into the sockets. And after this, the next step is the next very important point of my biodigital workflow. It's the biological sealing of our grafted side. And therefore, I cover my sticky bone with a layer of a solid PRF membrane. I call it the biocover. It acts like a natural fibrin barrier, promoting angiogenesis, protecting the graft from microbial invasion, and enhancing the early phase of the wound healing process. And finally, we reach a point when we're talking about conserving and preserving natural contours. Today, we know we get no stabilization of our soft tissue without immediately loading it. And this so-called socket seal, yeah, is very important, therefore, and there my strategy differs from anterior region to posterior region. In anterior region, I use a pre-designed, prefabricated provisional, and in posterior region, I use a pre-designed and a prefabricated individual anatomized healing abutment. And here we see both socket seal elements in action. They're both designed and printed in my office with my 3D printer, and we see that both socket seal elements provide a perfect stabilization and support of our surrounding soft tissue. Right, and look at this. Just after 1 week, thanks to our POF workflow, we have wonderful, healthy gingival contours. And above all, Kirsten neither had pain nor swelling. And the same situation after 3 months. We see absolute healthy, stable, strong soft tissue situation, and a very nice emergency profile. I think every prosthodontics and any dental technician can work with this situation quite well. And exactly with this situation, the patient is handed back to the referring dentist for further prosthetic rehabilitation. And thankfully, Kirsten came back after 1 year abroad to my office, and we see same situation, very nice soft and hard tissue situation. We see stable papillae, we see no undercuts, no plaque triangles that could promote food impaction or peri-implantitis. And this is for me actually a natural, beautiful, wonderful outcome. Engineered with technology and biology. So I still owe you the radiographs. Here we see the radiograph from surgery day, all placed as planned. No wonder we did full surgery. And after 18 months, we see very nice bone situation. We see a clear evidence of a remodeling process. The porous, sticky bone in the initial area is now transformed to dense cortical structures extending directly up to the implant shoulder. So, now when we're talking about the future of implantology, and that's precisely why we all gathered around here at this amazing congress. The primary question is not how much more digital our workflows could become. Because do we succeed in implantology only because of technology? Or do we succeed in implantology only because of biology? Because technology can place the implant, but biology decides the outcome. And the true success happens with the fifth element, when technology meets biology. And that's the fifth element, that's biology. We all do implants, for sure, but I love to engineer healing. Thank you so much for your valued attention.